Good morning. I bring greetings from Ashirwad and also from Developmental Pediatrics Department at MOSA Medical College. I initiated a conversation on parenting of preschool children, and I touched upon the topic last week on parenting of preschool children with regard to creating a child-friendly home. I raised 5 thoughts that parents can consider about making their home child-friendly by creating a physical space, emotional space, social space, moral space, and a cognitive space for their preschool children. I want to now turn our attention to thinking about parenting functions that we are called upon to exercise when we are involved with our preschool children. I want to suggest 5 important functions that parents can share with their preschool children at home by being their companions, formators, pathfinders, comforters, and self-givers. Let me begin by the theme of parents becoming companions to their children. When a mother returns home with her newborn baby, it is the father and the mother who would become the primary caregivers and providers for that newborn baby. This function of a father and mother surrounding a newborn baby and moving on to provide their presence as their gift to their child, to me, is the best expression of companionship. I might refer to this as co-parenting. The father and mother equally involved from the time of conception of a fetus to all the experiences that they would go through from the arrival of their newborn baby. A mother carrying the baby in her womb and later carrying the baby in her arms and breastfeeding and doing everything that would make a baby comfortable would be a significant contribution to help a baby develop attachment behavior to the parents. When the father similarly is involved in carrying the baby and attending to the baby in engaging play, communication, and caring for that baby, would actually contribute to make that baby feel comfortable in the confines of a home. We have come to a place where most parents nowadays would be working parents. As a result of these compulsions that they carry in their workplace, their time at home would get reduced, and a child in the period of infancy or toddler stage, when he or she is still at home, is going to be reduced. This care that an infant or a toddler would receive would then be provided by the grandparents at home or caregivers. There are some parents who take turns in the first year of the life of a child to take long leave, which is now the entitlement of a mother and a father when a new child is born in the family. The government and many private organizations provide extra time, even up to 1 year, for a mother to be available for her child and the father to have some paternal leave to be present in the initial months of the child. The second thought I want to suggest is parents are also formators. When you think of a child playing with a play dough, you realize how that dough can be molded to any form and pattern according to the desire and interest of that child. In one sense, our child also is in a similar situation with regard to our relationship with that child as parents. Parents can provide the strands to weave the imagination, thought process, choices, play patterns, conversation times, social times, and everything else that will constitute the formative process of a child. A child is a physical being, a mental being, a spiritual being, and a social being. And this process of integrating these 4 dimensions of a child to become complete as a person is a process that would start early in life. What a young adult is in his or her thought process, value system, approach to life, and way of living would be largely influenced by how parents influenced their children in the first 3 years. I had a classmate when I was studying for my undergraduate training who came from a family that followed Gandhian traditions. His father would take him regularly to Anandavan, a rehabilitation center for leprosy patients started by Baba Amte near Wardha. This experience of going with his father to take care of patients of leprosy in that institution, week after week, gave him an inspiration to take an interest in learning to become a doctor later in life. And this particular person, who because of the influence of having been with people who were less advantaged than others, happened to spend his lifetime working with a tribal community in giving them a health center and contributing in the community health activities in the large district of one particular state, as a result of which that particular district has far better health parameters among the tribal community than other places. So what did this young boy acquire from his father, who exposed him to some opportunities in life in being involved with people who were less advantaged? He understood that his life was to be lived in the consciousness of others and their needs. And he and his wife later spent their professional years in the company of people, the tribal community, for whom no health facility existed in that particular district. Every child, therefore, imbibes a perspective about life through the formative influence that parents will provide. It is unfortunate that most of our children now find their entertainment and engagement with the media, the television and the mobile phone. Instead, if parents were to spend time engaging their children in conversation, in taking them to places of importance, in giving them experiences about life that they ought to consider to have a vocation or a purpose in life, would actually be a big contribution to help in their formative process. Parents are companions, parents are formators. Parents are also pathfinders. I remember an incident that took place at Don Bosco High School at Egmore in Chennai. A slum that was nearby to the school got burned and many houses were gutted. A child who saw this slum in flames one afternoon carried this message of horror to his parents when he reached back home that evening. He told his parents there were children in that particular slum who would have lost their school bags, school books, and everything that they needed to learn. He asked his parents, "Can I take my spare school books and uniform and give to one or two children in that slum?" The parents, having been moved by this particular thought of their son, decided to visit the slum the next day, and having been moved themselves by the sight of a devastated slum, offered to the teacher in the class to gather as many materials as possible from various people and bring it to the school to give it away to children from that slum. And that became a big public activity in which many more schools got involved in helping that slum to be restored to some normalcy, with provisions for children and various forms of support for parents to rebuild their homes. I was moved to hear this story because it was a child who opened the eyes of the public about what they can do to provide help for people, particularly for children in that slum. We ought to help our children to be pathfinders. They ought to be just not going to school to learn information, but they go to school to have their life touched by a perspective that they can have to live mindfully of others. Their conduct and character are being formed in the early years, and parents are to be pathfinders to give them a future that is larger than just a work or a profession, but a calling to live for a worthwhile cause. Fourthly, parents are also comforters. I heard the story of a child who often gets up in the morning crying. During the conversation, I realized that ever since their grandfather has moved away to another place to be with another member of the family, this child was missing him. Because the child got up every morning crying, the time before going to work and getting the child ready for school were a pressure time for parents. Following the conversation, the parents decided that they would take turn to be with their child for extra time in the evening, to read stories, to play with the child, to go for a walk, and to prepare the evening time an easier transition for that child. This child, after about 3 to 4 weeks of that special exercise that parents provided for him in the evening time, which was normally occupied by the grandfather earlier on, gradually began to get up in the morning with more cheerful face and ready to welcome the day. Behind various sorrowful and sad experiences of our children, there is an inner story that they can't always articulate because they are not good in communication when they are young. But it is by observing, suspecting, and considering various options that one would come to realize what is that which a child carries beyond the spoken words as an emotion to which parents can respond in helping to comfort and encourage a child. Some children, because of experiences at school or at home, can carry memories of disappointments. This trauma of disappointment would perhaps be often overcome by many children because they have short memories and they move on from one experience to another and often live thinking and dwelling on the pleasant experiences of life. If you were to find a preschool child not so cheerful, easy to relate to, or to play with, or to socialize, remember, there may be a darker side in that child's life which would need our exploration. And this would bring enormous comfort and support for that child. I touched upon 4 aspects of parenting functions toward preschool children. The first was parents to be companions. Second was to be formators. Third, to be pathfinders. And fourth, to be comforters. I come to the 5th aspect of a parenting function towards preschool child, and that is self-giving. One child, while getting out of the car to go to school, turned to his parents who were in the car and said, "Will you be at home when I come back at 4 o'clock?" This question by the child disturbed the parents. They discussed between themselves as they were going to work as to how they can respond to this particular interest that their son expressed. They discussed this issue with their superiors in the offices where they worked. It was possible for them to readjust their work so that they could take turn to be at home, at least for a while, around 4 o'clock when their son returned. And for the next 3 months or so, when they provided this support, one day, this boy said, "Mummy and Daddy, thank you for being with me when I returned from school. Now that I'm fine, you can come back at the usual time from the office." It was this particular child who, when he was 12 years, became very friendly towards his ailing grandfather and took a lot of responsibilities to care for him. While narrating this particular story, the parents told me that perhaps that gesture that they were able to show to their son when he needed them to be at home when he returned from school would have touched him in some way, because of which he developed a very caring attitude towards others. He expressed that in an immensely satisfying way towards his grandfather when he was sick. While talking about this to their older son, who surprised them by his act of generosity towards his grandfather, said, "You took care of me when I was young, and now it was my turn to take care of my grandfather." That self-giving attitude of the parents toward their son at a time when he needed a particular help laid the foundation for this child to be friendly, thoughtful, and mindful of others. So let me conclude. We have an enormous responsibility to lay the foundation in the subconscious mind of our preschool children about what life ought to emerge as they think about their future. And if they are to be people that we desire them to be, then parents ought to be companions, formators, pathfinders, comforters, and self-givers towards their children. Thank you for listening, and I would look forward to your comments and responses. Have a good day.